The history of Karbala, a river of tears and an ocean of truth. Have you ever heard the sky cry? Have you ever seen the earth shake with grief? Have you ever watched angels descend in silence, weeping over the body of a man who refused to bow to tyranny? This is Karbala. Prologue: the tear that never dried. Karbala is not just an event. It is not simply a battle. Karbala is a mirror in which we see the soul of Islam tested, broken, and yet eternally unbowed. It is the story of pain, purity, patience, and principle. A story that begins not with weapons, but with a child, kissed by the Prophet, loved by the heavens, and fated to die alone on scorched sand. This speech is not history as dates and names, it is history as wounds and witness. We will walk through this journey not as observers, but as mourners. Every moment backed by the verses of the Quran, every warning sealed by the hadith of the Messenger. The birth of the martyr, a grandson like no other. The Prophet once held his grandson, Hussain, in his arms, and his eyes filled with tears. When asked why he was crying, he said, "This son of mine will be killed. And those who hear of it and do not weep have hearts of stone." From the very beginning, the Quran honored the household of the Prophet, calling them purified, chosen, elevated. They were not simply family, they were the bearers of truth. And yet, it was foretold that this blessed child would die in a land far from home, under the swords of people who claimed to pray, yet betrayed every sacred value. The Quran's warning about hypocrisy and corruption. The Quran speaks about people who pray, yet their hearts are empty. It warns of those who outwardly obey but inwardly plan treachery. Surah Baqarah speaks of hypocrites, those who claim belief but walk with the devil. These people existed in the time of Hussein. They prayed behind the Prophet, yet they would later cheer when his blood was spilled. The Quran said, "Do not take your faith as a game," but many did. And they would form the army that stood against Hussein on the day of Ashura. The rise of tyranny, from caliphate to kingdom. After the Prophet left this world, the light of Islam began to flicker. Greed, politics, and personal ambition began to replace justice and piety. The Quran reminds us of the fate of past nations who turned their backs after receiving guidance. History repeated itself. Muawiyah rose to power, twisting leadership into kingship, and placing his son Yazid as ruler. Yazid, known for sin, indulgence, and disregard for the Quran, was forced upon the Ummah. The Prophet had warned of corrupt leaders, of wolves wearing the skin of sheep. Yazid was the manifestation of that prophecy. Hussein's refusal, a stand that shook the heavens. When Yazid demanded allegiance, Hussein said, "A man like me does not give allegiance to a man like him." This was not arrogance, it was Islam standing up to oppression. The Quran commands believers to stand for truth even against their own selves. Hussein was not fighting for power, he was standing for principle. He was the last barrier between Islam and its complete political corruption. He left Medina with family, not an army. He walked toward death so that truth could live. Chapter 5: The Letters of Kufa and the Betrayal of the People. Thousands in Kufa wrote to Hussein, begging him to come and lead them. They swore loyalty. They cried out for justice. But when Muslim ibn Aqil, Hussein's cousin, reached Kufa, he was abandoned and killed. The Quran says, "They break their promises every time, and they do not fear God." This verse came alive in Kufa. When Hussein arrived, the people who had begged for him turned against him. They joined Yazid's army. They watched as water was cut off from the Prophet's family. They stood silent as children cried of thirst. Chapter 6: The Final Night, a Garden of Martyrs. The night before Ashura, Hussein gathered his companions. He told them, "They want me. You are free to leave." But no one left. Men, women, young boys, even a 6-month-old baby, they all stayed. They knew they would die, but they stayed because the Quran promised something greater. Do not think those who are killed in the way of God are dead. They are alive, receiving sustenance. That night was not silence. It was filled with prayer, tears, and whispered goodbyes. The angels descended, watching the last righteous souls prepare for eternity. The day of Ashura, hearts were torn from heaven. It began with the dawn. Hussein's small camp stood before an army of thousands. But they fought not with numbers, they fought with faith. One by one, Hussein's companions went forward. Each reciting verses from the Quran. Each calling the enemy to return to God. Each falling, smiling, Because death in truth is life eternal. When even the infant was killed with an arrow to the neck, the skies wept. The Hadith says, the heavens and earth wept for Hussein. Never had a tragedy stained the world so deeply. The last stand, a lion falls, but his roar echoes eternally. Hussein stood alone. His body torn, his heart full, his eyes raised to the sky. He gave his final words to God, and fell upon the earth. But they did not stop. They trampled his body with horses. They raised his head on a spear. They mocked the family of the Prophet. They thought they had won. But they did not know that the Quran says, do not think that God is unaware of what the wrongdoers do. He only delays them until a day their eyes will stare in horror. Justice was coming. But not from swords, from truth. Zainab's voice, the sword of words. Hussein's sister, Zainab, was taken in chains. But she did not cry in weakness. She stood in the court of Yazid and said, I see nothing but beauty. Her speech echoed with verses of the Quran. She reminded the tyrants of the day of judgment. She told them, you may kill the body, but the message is alive. The Quran says, and speak the truth, even if it is bitter. She was the living embodiment of that command. She turned Karbala from a battlefield into a revolution. The eternal impact, why Karbala still burns within us. The Quran tells us to remember the stories of the righteous, so we do not lose our way. Karbala is that story. It is a story of a man who gave everything for a principle. It is a lesson that truth is not measured by numbers but by sincerity. Hussein's blood became the ink that rewrote Islamic consciousness. The Prophet had said, Hussein is from me, and I am from Hussein. What he meant is this: without Hussein, the Islam he preached would have been lost. Karbala preserved the soul of Islam. Martyrdom in the Quran, victory beyond death. The Quran repeatedly honors the martyrs. It promises them gardens beneath which rivers flow. It says they are not dead. It says their reward is with their Lord. Hussein and his companions are the stars of that promise. They chose thirst over humiliation. They chose arrows over compromise. They chose the Quran over worldly gain. Their victory is not in surviving, but in surrendering with dignity. They taught us what it means to live by faith and die for truth. Final reflection: what would you do on the day of Karbala? The question is not why Hussein was killed. The question is, why didn't we stand with him? Every day is a Karbala. Every heart is a battlefield. Every decision is a choice between Yazid and Hussein. The Quran commands, stand firm for justice. Will we stand, or will we betray? Will we cry for Hussein, but live like Yazid? Or will we honor his sacrifice by living with truth, courage, and honor? A river of blood, a light that never dies. Karbala is a river of blood that flows into the ocean of truth. It is the cry of a baby on the battlefield, the silence of a broken mother, the courage of a sister in chains. It is the Quran come alive, written not in ink, but in tears. This is the history of Karbala. And it is still being written. In every heart that refuses to bow to falsehood. Karbala lives within us. Karbala did not end on the 10th of Muharram. It lives in every moment where truth is silenced, where justice is denied, where the innocent suffer at the hands of the powerful. And it lives in every heart that dares to speak the truth, stand against oppression, and refuse to bow to falsehood, no matter the cost. Hussein is not just a martyr of the past. He is the voice of courage in our souls. He is the question that will echo on the day of judgment. When the truth was slaughtered in Karbala, where were you?